Excellent.
So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the latest webinar from Chapman Robinson and Moore. Much appreciate you can join us on this morning. At least in a wet morning like this, you didn't have to travel anywhere. You can enjoy it from the comfort of your own office or home. So, our webinar today is SEO and PPC, entitled Time for a Fight or a Marriage Made in Heaven. And I'm delighted that we've been able to partnership with Zanzi Digital today and hear from experts and the presenter, Jayne Reddyhoff. I've personally known Jayne for more years than we'd probably both like to admit. But for me, one of my go-to experts in terms of if I'm looking for SEO, pay-per-click advisory type advice. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jayne to run the webinar content, and then we'll pick up with some question and answers at the end. Before I just hand over, can I just make sure everybody can hear me, so I'm not just talking to myself and Jayne? So on the right-hand side, you should have a chat box, and if you could put a Y or a yes in that chat box to make sure you can hear me, that would be much appreciated. Fantastic. Okay, technology does work. So, like I say, over to Jayne and Jayne Reddyhoff from Zanzi Digital.
Thanks very much, Mike. Good morning to everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this. So, SEO and PPC, time for a fight or a marriage made in heaven. Clients don't usually come to us and say, which is best, SEO and PPC, which should I be doing more of? They're more likely to come to us and say, I need more sales, I need more leads from my website, or I want to appear on the first page of the search engines, I want more visits to my websites. And PPC and SEO are two of the ways that we can help clients to achieve that objective of getting more relevant visitors to their website. So today, I want to try and clear up any misunderstandings people have about what they are and how they work together, give you some tips on making them work well together. I'd be delighted if you ask any questions that you want to ask throughout the session. I am aware that I do sometimes talk too fast, so if I accidentally speed up, please let me know if I'm talking too fast. So as Mike said, I'm Jayne Reddyhoff, Managing Director of Zanzi Digital. I've been providing digital marketing services for about 12 years now, and I've probably known Mike for most of that time, amazingly. All right, so I thought it would be useful to start off with just revisiting exactly what is SEO and PPC and the differences, so that everybody knows what we're talking about. Pay-per-click is all about paying, directly paying. So if anybody clicks on your ad, you pay for that click. So it's very much about directly paying to get visitors to your website. It's much quicker to start PPC than SEO, which takes a long time. It's extremely easy to measure. And one of the combinations that we do quite often for clients is building a perfect landing page and associating it with paid search, and you get the most incredibly high conversion rates if you do that because it's so precise. But you do pay for those clicks forever. There's no question of it ever becoming free. And it is also the case that fewer people click on ads than click on natural search results. There's figures ranging between only 15% of people click on ads up to 35%. It very much depends on your market. Search engine optimization, that's all about the activities that you do to improve your natural search engine rankings. Bear in mind that both PPC and SEO have the same goal. They're trying to drive more relevant traffic to your website. It's just different ways of doing it. So SEO, the value builds up over time. If you get a really, really good link from, I don't know, a mainstream website, whether that's a mainstream daily newspaper, whether that's the BBC or a university, that link will go on being useful forever. Your organic listings are more likely to be clicked on, but it does take longer to get going, and the algorithms and rules can change over time, and I'll come on to some examples of that. And one thing I always think, people always think, oh, well, SEO is free. It's not really, because it requires a lot of effort, and effort takes time and money. So I just want to ask you this question. Again, I'd quite like it if you could put into the chat whether you agree with it. So if you spend a lot of money on PPC, I'm talking about a serious lot. If you're a company that's spending hundreds of thousands of pounds a month on PPC, Google will reward you by improving your natural search rankings. Do you believe that is true or false? I'd appreciate knowing what you think. Anybody got an opinion? What have we got? So at least one of you said you think it's false. Anybody else? Possibly. Okay, I mean, the good news is it doesn't matter how much you spend on PPC, it doesn't affect your natural search rankings, which is good news for small businesses with small budgets. It's one of those things that Google has stuck to ever since it's been around. The people who work on natural search are not impacted at all in terms of the rankings they give, the decisions they make by paid search. And that's the way it should be, because if they were, nobody would really trust Google to deliver the best results. So if you're a small investor in PPC, you can rest assured that the fact you're only spending a small amount or not spending at all have a negative effect on natural search. But there are ways that PPC can directly affect search engine rankings. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can do that. And of the things I'm going to talk about, some of them, if you do this with PPC, what happens in terms of your natural search rankings will just happen. But there are other things that you can actually choose to do that will affect the number of clicks you get on your website and how well it works. So the first thing is that if such as an ad at the top of the page as well as an organic listing, they are more likely to click on the organic listing or the ad. So in other words, if you've got both showing, either of them is more likely to get a click. So what we say is that 1 + 1 equals somewhere between 2.2 and 2.5, possibly as high as 3. So it's really a question of deciding whether you think that the cost for doing it is worth that extra benefit of getting the extra clicks. It's the reason why a lot of people bid on their own brand name, to make sure that their ad shows at the top of the listing. And linked to that is this ability to dominate search results if you do this right. So if you are, I'm going to show you an example here. This particular organization, Blow Motion, has got an ad at the top. You can see the little green word ad, but you can see they've also got 4 of the shopping ads are the same company. So they're already dominating the top of that page there. And this is a huge advantage for e-commerce businesses. It's not relevant if you're not selling products, because only products can use these shopping image ads. But if you are, you can dominate the top of the page like that. And that is likely to have a massive effect on how many people click on your ad. If you're also appearing in the natural search results, like this company is here, they are completely dominating the top of the first page, particularly on a small screen. So there are stats that say that somewhere between 47 and 50% of all searches result in an organic click, and somewhere between 2 and 3% of all searches result in a paid click. But if you do something like this, then you might take 25 to 50% of the clicks that are coming through. So you will get a lot more visitors to your website. Now, it's not affecting your natural search results directly, but then we come on to what happens if you send all those visitors. So natural search, the organic search results and the work you do on SEO is a bit of a virtuous circle. So you get some clicks, you're sending those people, or those people land on some really, really valuable pages, and because they like the content they see, they generate links to the pages, or they mention you on social media, or they share those pages, all of which increases your exposure. Those are some of the signals that Google looks at, and so it will improve your rankings, and then you get more organic search clicks. So you're into this virtuous circle. Now, the thing with PPC is that if you direct people to your website, you're effectively getting more visitors. And if those paid search visitors also really like the page, they may link to the page, mention you in other places, share you, which again increases your exposure and can increase your ranks. So fundamentally what it's doing here is it's increasing the power of your virtuous circle, and that's well worth doing. It's particularly valuable if you want to think about using paid search to send people to not sales content but valuable content. So if you've got some really interesting article or blog post, something that's valuable, that's the kind of thing that is likely to get shared, to get linked to, etc., and likely to improve your natural search rankings. So this is one of the ways in which, if you do paid search well, it can slowly and steadily lead to an improvement in your natural search rankings, not directly because of paid clicks, but because of the fact that you're directing more people to valuable content that they want to link to. The next point is about getting your exposure and expanding your or extending your credibility. If you are a brand new company and nobody's ever heard of you, you're not likely to get that many clicks, even if you do get up into the natural listings. But searchers who have been previously exposed to a site or a brand via an ad may be more likely to click on a natural listing next time. And if you look at your analytics data and you look at visitors to your website, one of the things it will tell you is where people came from. So you can go and look at a thing that tells you, we got 5% of our visitors first of all came from an ad and then clicked on a natural listing or clicked on an ad twice. So you can actually see the effect it has. So this is just more about exposure. It's about extending their perception of you, having seen you, so that when they see you again in a natural search, you're not completely unknown. So if you're a new company, that can be very, very useful. Another way to use PPC, and this isn't directly about increasing your search engine rankings, but it's about combating negative PR or amplifying positive PR. If something negative appears about you in a national daily, which happened to BP about an oil spill, you'll find if you type in BP's name, all the things that come up are natural listings, but not their own. They might be the Daily Mail or the Guardian or whatever talking about it. And this Gulf oil spill, BP did pay for PPC ads for quite a while afterwards, so they could explain what they were doing. So what you could be doing is making sure that your ads are showing there, so that you are starting to try and own the conversation about what's going on, so you can talk about what you're doing to combat whatever the problem is that's happened. And again, it's about visibility, which is the point I made before about dominating the results. But the other way to use it is to amplify positive PR. We worked recently with a woman who was starting a new business, which was about weight loss, and it was specifically about genetically choosing what diet plan to follow. And she got some really, really useful articles in a couple of the national dailies. Unfortunately, she didn't have the money to invest in PPC at the time. And the effect of those articles in the Daily Mail and the Sunday paper lasted for about 2 weeks. But if she'd been able to run a PPC campaign at the same time, first of all, there would have been even more mentions of her. And secondly, she could, if she was advertising on the Daily Mail campaign, she could have gone on getting that ad to show and getting that link through to the Daily Mail to show for a lot longer. So again, it's about visibility, it's about controlling what's going on. It's not directly affecting natural search rankings, but it's helping to make them more valuable. And one of the things that you can do and you can choose to do to help you with your SEO is about testing your organic things with PPC. So you can test your organic keywords. This is an example of a client of ours. They specialize in asbestos disposal, and this is small pieces of work. So it's not I'm taking down a whole building, but I'm working on a new building site, and I find 3 old electricity consumer boards that have got asbestos flash guards, and you are not allowed to just chuck that stuff into a normal skip. So you call MailArch, and they have a man with a van who can come and pick this stuff up. But the point is, asbestos removal has 3 very, very clear stages legally, and they're monitored by different legal authorities. So there's the identification and reporting, there's the removal, which includes safely wrapping it, and then there's the disposal. And all that MailArch recycling does is disposal. But we made the point to them that we thought their clients didn't know that. They didn't understand that. It was a bit too fine a distinction. So we tested 2 different types of ad, and we actually had slightly different wording on the landing page. We tested asbestos disposal and asbestos removal. And sure enough, asbestos removal got something like 70% of the searches and the clicks and most of the conversions. Even though what the client needed was disposal, they were actually typing in removal. So that's something that Mail learned, that they needed to include the word removal on the pages on their website. If they didn't, if they only used the word disposal, they wouldn't get ranked as well, because those were not the words that their searchers were using. Now, as a third thing to do, we also started testing collection and to see what that would do, and it did have some impact. It does work, but nothing like as well as removal. This feeds directly into a comment I always make to clients, which is you don't need to think too much about what you're selling. You need to think about what your client is buying. And in this case, even though Mail is selling disposal, the client believes they're buying removal. So they can now make changes to their website based on what they learned. The other side of that is about the website copy and the layout. So this is another client that we did work for. They do what they actually call mobile collection, but what we would all call is business wheelie bins. So if you are a small local chain of restaurants, you'll have a contract with Corley's to have the right wheelie bins outside your shop, and they'll come and collect them once a week or twice a week, whatever it is. And we created a special landing page to go with the PPC campaign. And all of the PPC campaign phrasing was about wheelie bins because, again, we persuaded the client that their customers didn't really understand what mobile collection meant. And this was the first image that Corley's gave us and asked us to use on the landing page. And we were concerned about it, but we tested it. But when we changed to this image, which actually shows pictures of wheelie bins, the click-through rate went up dramatically, and so did the conversion rate, because suddenly the landing page spoke directly to what the client was typing in, which was wheelie bins, hired wheelie bins, commercial wheelie bins, restaurant wheelie bins, that kind of stuff. So again, we were able to feed back to Corley's, when you come to develop your new website pages, you need to think about the right images and the right pages. It's a really, really fast way of testing layout and copy. And we always recommend it to people. The feedback is so fast, and you can work out the effectiveness of it. I know a woman who I met through an e-commerce organization who wrote a book a few years ago, and she wanted to know the title of the book. It's actually now called the E-commerce Masterclass, and she ran a Google ad campaign for about 2 weeks to find out what kind of phrasing about e-commerce masterclass or e-commerce expertise people typed in, and she selected the title of her book based on what she found with that. It's an incredibly powerful tool for research. And the stuff I've said there about PPC doesn't just apply to Google AdWords or Bing ads, it also applies to social media ads. So this is a test that we did for a company that sells sports interest holidays, so Ashes tours, Lions tours, and this was a Facebook campaign, and here what we were testing was the images, which image would work best. So we tried 3 different images on their ads for the Ashes tour, and sadly, in this case, there was no really clear winner. But interestingly, indirectly, we also found out about the fact that which wording was better, like see the Ashes in Australia worked better than some of the other wording. But again, it's immediate response within 2 weeks. If there'd been a major winner, we would have identified it. In this case, there wasn't a major winner, so we agreed with the client that they should continue to use a range of images because different people were attracted by different images. So, SEO and PPC, is it a marriage made in heaven? Yes, it definitely is. When you are talking about what you do on your page, SEO is not simple, it can be quite complicated, and the biggest part of SEO in terms of value is about link building. So the stuff I referred to earlier, where you develop your virtuous circle, that's where you want to try and make it work, where you want to be sending your PPC visitors to really valuable content, so you'll expand on the links. The easy thing that PPC can help you with is to determine whether your pages are correctly set up, whether you're using the right words on your pages, whether you're using the right images on your pages, and that will also help Google to understand what the page is about. So, yes, you should be using PPC to help you. And there are lots of ways you can do it, and I really hope you've got some questions for me.
Super, thank you, Jayne. Much appreciated, and the expertise as usual shared is much appreciated. So if anybody has any questions for Jayne, there is obviously the facility to do that and ask those questions in the chat box. So if you'd like to add any questions in the chat box there. I will kick this off then, Jayne, in terms of, one of the things that we often get from clients is about limited budget. So if they have a limited budget, should they start with PPC or SEO?
It's never a simple answer, unfortunately. If you are an e-commerce business and you're selling a product that has a reasonable margin and is not too high consideration, what I mean is if you're selling, I don't know, if you're selling trainers, people probably know what they want. They want Nike XYZ trainers in a certain size. We would always recommend PPC. And in most businesses for e-commerce, they should always do PPC ongoing. If you are a brand new company and you have a complex service that people don't understand, then if you can find the budget, I would recommend PPC for sending people to valuable information pages. And the reason I say that is if you're a brand new business, you say, should you start with SEO or PPC? If you start with SEO, it might take 6 months for your website to be found. Whereas if you start with PPC, you might get found straight away. But the thing to do is to try and short circuit and say, I have some valuable content on my website. I'm not going to use PPC to advertise for leads. I'm going to use PPC to encourage people to come in and download some useful content or read some useful content and engage with useful content in return for an email address. So you're there using PPC to build your email list, to get people to know your content and hopefully share it, while you work on SEO, which is much slower and hopefully eventually will get you there. If you're in an incredibly competitive field against some really big players, SEO might never work very well for you.
Thanks, Jayne.
So I must go on.
So I was just saying the point you finished on there was quite an interesting one, and that leads to another question that's come in. So, how do I know that SEO is actually working for me then?
Although I said that PPC is really easy to measure, there are things you can measure with SEO. There are lots and lots of tools, and we use, I can't remember, probably about a dozen different tools. So, for example, you can say, how am I comparing with the competition? There are tools that will tell you that. You can determine what's called a domain authority for your website, and there are various tools, some from Moz and others, that will determine a domain authority. A domain authority is a number between 1 and 100, I think, only it's a logarithmic scale, not a straight scale, that says this is how valuable Google thinks your website is in your general field. And so that if your website has a high domain authority, it is likely that it will rank well for any search within your field. If it's a low domain authority, it's likely that it won't. The most important thing for you is not so much what the actual domain authority is, but how your domain authority compares with your competitors. Because if all of you have a very low domain authority, but yours is higher than theirs, you'll do okay. But if you've got a domain authority of, I don't know, 10, and your nearest competitor's got a domain authority of 40, which, because it's a logarithmic scale, is extremely high, you're going to have it's going to take you a long time. But you can measure that. You can look at how many visitors do I get on certain keywords, and again, that you can use tools for that. Not just Google Analytics, because that usually doesn't tell you what keywords people typed in, but Google Search Console will give you information on that. You can find out from Google Search Console how often your website is actually even being shown for certain phrases, as well as how many visitors do you get for those phrases. There are other tools which will show you on average what the keywords are ranking for. We've just done some work for another technical company who does computational fluid dynamics, which basically means wind tunnels but computer generated. And their homepage actually didn't say the words computational fluid dynamics. So one of the first changes we made for them was to say, add these words into a couple of sentences on the homepage, and we could clearly see from one of the tools we were using that the ranking of their website for certain phrases went up significantly within a month as a result of doing that. So there are lots and lots of tools that will help you do that. And then the simplistic one of, am I getting more visitors for certain keyword phrases? Am I getting more visitors to certain pages? It's a long job, and it is tougher to work out whether it's working than it is with PPC. You have to think hard about it, but it's doable.
So thanks. Can you see the question in the chat? So,
yeah. Somebody's asked a question. Is it best to start the PPC campaigns on pages that are not doing so well against the competitors? I'm not quite sure if I understand that, but I'll answer what I think you mean, and then you can tell me whether that's answered it. There is no point in doing a PPC campaign on a page that will not perform well. So I've mentioned already when I was talking that we create special landing pages for clients. And in the case of MailArch, that was because it was a very small website with a couple of pages. None of them would have worked well for PPC. So if your page is not doing well against competitors because it's not a good page, then no, it wouldn't be good to start PPC on that. If you've got a page that is absolutely brilliant, you know, it's when people do come to it, they really engage with it. When people get to it, it works really well, but not enough people are finding it, then that might well be a page to point your PPC campaign to. And that's why I say, you know, if you've got a really good article that's got a really strong call to action, and that you know that when people visit it, they actually engage with it, yes, that would be a good target for PPC. There's no point in wasting money on sending clicks to pages that don't convert. Yeah, can we just run the campaign for a few months and then stop? Absolutely, definitely. If you want to run a campaign because you need to get yourself established, say you're an e-commerce business and you know that once you've got a decent mailing list, once you're starting to get buyers, you'll get repeat buyers and you'll get reviews, etc., then you might choose to run a PPC campaign for a while. As I say, most e-commerce businesses will go on running it forever. But yes, you can run a PPC campaign and then you could stop it if you wanted to when you thought your SEO was working perfectly. In many cases, it's still worth doing it on a lesser scale, as I said, so you can have more domination of the top of the first page of the search results. Any more questions?
Can you see the...
Nobody's asked me how much.
So there's a question.
Sorry?
There's a question on the chat. As a copywriter, I often use keyword tools. Which ones would you recommend?
That's a really, really difficult question. The simplest one to use is Google's own keyword tool. To be honest, the way we do it is we don't use one. They all have different strengths. So there's several free tools. Most of the paid SEO tools that we use also have keyword research tools in them. So we use, I'm trying to think, RankWatch, I'm looking at RankWatch, SEO Monitor, the Moz tools. They've all got keyword tools in them. And actually, I've just remembered there is one that's called, there's a couple of quite humorous ones. One that's called Ask the Public, I think it's called. Can you just search for that? See if it's there. I think it's called Ask the Public. It's quite amusing. And it will give you lots and lots of interesting and different ideas. The other thing that I quite like using, and when you say you're a copywriter, this came up for us recently, is SEMrush. So we were doing copywriting, well, we weren't doing the copywriting, we were doing the keyword research for a copywriter for a product, a set of products, and it was very, very long tail searches. They were really, really specific, and there were hardly any searches for them. So when we used all of the keyword research tools, they all said there's no searches for this. So what we did was we went into SEMrush and we said, show us what the competitors are getting found for. And that was a really good way of finding out. Yeah, it is. It's called Ask the Public, and it's quite amusing. But it will be really, really good at coming up with some keyword phrases or questions rather than just simple words. So those are the ones I would recommend, and just look for free tools. Can you go back to it?
Excellent. So you're obviously answering the questions, Jane, because we've got a couple of thank yous. The one that always interests me, and obviously from an accountant's and the numbers position, one of the things that we get asked about is around cost. I think there's a bit of nervousness of people doing pay-per-click because of could the cost run away with people. So how do people think about how much is it going to cost me? How do I determine what my starting pay-per-click budget should be, for example?
Okay. Well, I'll give you, again, some examples. If you are selling pension advice or mortgage advice, you're probably going to pay £15 a click. And so small businesses won't do that. But if I take the mail arch example, we sat down with him and we said, well, this is only small business. You're only charging a few £100 for each of these. We're not convinced that pay-per-click is going to be profitable for you. But in that particular business case, he had a man with a van, and that man with the van was only half occupied. So his attitude was, any extra sales we make to fill the man with the van don't have to make much profit for it still to be better. And in practice, because we got such a good click-through rate and conversion rate with the landing pages, it worked quite well. So what sorts of questions we ask people when we're starting is, what's your average order value? What's your average profit? What's the lifetime value of your customer? I'll give you another example. The very first PPC campaign I ever ran, so many years ago I can't remember, was for a shop selling stuff for children in Islington. And the particular thing that was concerning me was that they were selling babies' sandals at £35 a pair. And as far as I could work out, it had cost them £35 or £30 to get that sale. But what he told me was he was quite happy with that, because he knew from his own reporting and monitoring that the average customer came back and made 3 more purchases. So even if his first purchase only covered its costs, he knew he would make his money on the lifetime value of that customer. So you need to work all those things out, because then you can say, right, the maximum I can afford to get a new customer from PPC is X. And then you can start calculating it. You can do a small test. You can see what it's going to do. Google will give you an estimate of how much the click cost is likely to be. It's not that reliable, but it is an indicator. So like I said, I know that if you ask Google how much mortgage broker or mortgages was, it would be 15 quid. But the other thing is that the better you make your landing page, the better you make your AdWords campaign, the cheaper your click costs. Google actually rewards you by showing your ads for a lower and letting people click on your ads for a lower click cost if your ad works really well. So it's not a black and white. The one thing I will say is the cost will never run away with you, because you set your maximum daily or monthly budget. And if we run a campaign for anybody, for the first week or so, we are monitoring that all the time to check whether it's going to run away. And if it was going to be just too expensive, we'd know that within a week probably. If it was going to work really, really brilliantly, we'd know that within a week or so or a month. If a normal campaign, it just starts off okay and it gradually gets better over a few months. But unless you actually make a mistake, don't put a limit on your budget and don't pay attention to what you're doing, and I have seen that happen, your budget won't run away with you because you tell Google the maximum you want to spend. And it's always worth testing it to start with.
Correct. There's another question. So do you promote tools like lead forensics to get a better return of this kind of activity?
Lead forensics isn't one I would personally promote because it's very expensive. But yes, tools like that which enable you to monitor exactly what goes on better when people get to your site can be extremely useful. Don't forget that even Google offers some free tools for that. You can have a special phone number through Google. But yes, it's another thing we've done for people is this business of a specific phone number, so that you know when somebody rings on it, they came from a Google ad campaign. And I think the other half of it is, I'd say PPC is really, really easy to measure, but we do always have to ask our clients to put in place their own measurements. So for example, if we're doing lead generation from PPC, we know we generated leads, but only the client can tell us whether those leads were high quality and whether those leads turned into customers. So we always get involved in putting in place a sort of a proper feedback loop, so we know how it's working. And again, referring to Mailart and Corley's, that's what we were doing there. We were having a telephone call with the person who was allocating the leads every month to say, right, these were the ones that came through, and they were able to feedback. These ones worked really well. These ones are still in the pipeline. These ones weren't so good, so that we could actually monitor, and modify what we did. But tools like lead forensics will help with that. But as I say, I think personally, I think lead forensics is very expensive, and there are lots of others these days that are cheaper. If anybody is using any kind of inbound marketing tool like HubSpot, they include those kind of tools in there. There's Jump Lead, which now does a lot of the similar stuff to HubSpot, and they started off as something that was the equivalent of lead forensics.
Thank you, Jayne. You mentioned when you were talking about pay-per-click budgets, about you can get a quick idea in a week how much you're spending, etc. But how long do you think it? This is probably an open-ended question, but how long do you think it should take me to perhaps get on the first page or to see some results from my pay-per-click?
If you're not on the first page, there's no point in it anyway. I mean, if for example, a client came to us and said, yep, I want PPC, but I don't want to spend more than 10p a click, and we knew that the average cost of the click was sort of 50p, we'd be saying it's not worth it. So we don't run PPC campaigns that don't show on the first page, because these days you get those 3 ads at the top and maybe 3 at the bottom, and there is no point if you're not up there. So in terms of how long it's not how long it takes to get to the first page, it's how long it takes to get a campaign that is running efficiently, so the cost per click of being at the top of the page is acceptable. And we would never agree to run a campaign for less than 3 months, because as I say, you will get the odd campaign that's a complete dog and you can spot that immediately. You'll get the odd campaign that's stunningly amazing and you can spot that immediately. It's more normal for a campaign to be okay and for it to take 3 months to tweak it into being more than okay. So we wouldn't be, if we were not getting people on the first page, we'd be saying this isn't worth doing.
Again, thank you. And I suppose, is there any industry numbers, if we were doing this without your expertise, to think about what an ideal click-through rate or a good click-through rate may be, or some statistics that we could be sort of measuring ourselves against?
It's interesting because 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I first started running PPC campaigns, we were looking to get more than a 5% click-through rate. Which doesn't sound very high, but can be enough. These days, Google will tell you that your average click-through rate is a lot lower than that. It's probably about 2%. However, I mean, it's actually slightly embarrassing with both the MailArch and the Call-Leads campaign. When we first set them up, we agreed with the client that our target was to get 2% click-through rate in the first month and to work towards 5% click-through rate. But because we had built a landing page that was absolutely specific to each ad group, we got a 10% click-through rate in the first month, and in one case it went up to 20% click-through rate, and in the other case it went up to 17% click-through rate. So 5% is fairly good these days, but again, it depends on the industry. And it does depend on what the quality of your landing page is like. And Google will pick up really fast that when people get through to the page from your ad, they are converting, they are staying, they are doing things, and it will reward you for that. But bear in mind, click-through rate is less important than the cost per conversion. So it's a combination of click-through rate, conversion rate, and what you're paying for your clicks. And what matters is how much did I pay for each conversion, not how many visitors did I get, not what was the percentage of clicks. There's no point in getting lots and lots of clicks and then they don't convert and you're just spending money for nothing. And I think that's one of the big things we have to educate clients about, is what should you be measuring? It's not, people say to us, I want more visitors to my website, and we look at it and say, well, actually, we don't think you do. We think you need to convert the ones you've got better. So what matters is what your final objective is. And having visitors to website as an objective is not usually a good idea, unless you're just trying to build brand awareness.
Excellent. Thank you, Jayne. That's great advice.
Right, we've got another question.
You can see that one.
We've got another question here about Google Shopping. What are the best tools for managing this? Okay, Google Shopping is incredibly important if you are an e-commerce business. It's absolutely vital. Generally speaking, it's still the case that the cost per sale is lower on Google Shopping than on Google Text Ads for e-commerce businesses. I can't think of a circumstance where we have not recommended you using Google Shopping for an e-commerce business, but I can think of circumstances where we suggested they turn off the text ads and only run Google Shopping because it works so much better. I've seen companies where Google Shopping was profitable and Google text ads on the e-commerce site were not profitable. The difference was so large. When you say what tool to manage it, Google's AdWords tool provides you with the tool for managing it. There are lots more complex tools. If you're a very large organization with the budget, you will find companies that have automatic links between their Google Shopping, their eBay shops, their Amazon shops, their stock control systems, and everything is updated automatically. If you're a smaller business, one thing you have to do, and we do this for our clients, is you have to update your Google feed. I think it's every 30 days. And I know I was talking to one of our guys yesterday. I was talking about a customer who's been with us for years and hardly ever calls us, and they just send us their updated feed every 30 days. So if you change the products or anything like that, but Google's own tools are fine for managing it. We don't have any problem with that, and spreadsheets for the feeds.
Fantastic, thank you, Jayne. So is there any last final burning questions that anybody would like to position to Jayne? I'd like to add those on to the chat. Just in case there are any, whilst we're waiting for any last questions, Jayne, would you like just to take the opportunity, obviously appreciate partnering with us to run this webinar and share your expertise, just to tell us a little bit more about how people can engage with you. You've obviously put your details up on that last slide.
Yeah, so I mean, email me. I do have a Twitter, which is Jayne Reddyhoff, but email us, go to the website, have a look. We're always happy to give advice on the phone. And I would say that if anybody is running pay-per-click, not sure about it, one thing we offer is a free quick audit of a pay-per-click campaign. And in general, I would say, if somebody is spending more than $2,000 a month on their AdWords campaign and they're running it themselves, I don't think I can remember a circumstance where, as a result of doing an audit and running it for them, in fact, in every case, we've been able to save them more than they've paid us for running it. But the first audit we do is always free. We spend 10 minutes looking through it. We then do a follow-up phone call to feedback the sorts of ideas, and we say we'll give you 3 ideas of how to improve it. And at that point, we always give a quote saying if you want us to actually do an optimization exercise. But AdWords is, in my opinion, the most complicated bit of website marketing. SEO is time consuming and has lots of things in it, but AdWords, if you don't know how to run it, you can make awful mistakes. And if you do know how to run it, you can massively improve campaigns. So I'd be really happy to hear from anybody. And again, I know we've got quite a few agencies, and I think web agencies and copywriters, etc. So it may not be yourselves, it may be your clients. Let them know. We're very happy to do a free audit.
Well, thank you, Jayne. Thank you again. As when we initially sort of spoke, originally with Ned and then with yourself, there was a great synergy in terms of what we do here at Chapman Robinson, and more about doing things, but measuring things, improving and sharing expertise. And
yes,
you certainly shared that with us today. Certainly from the level of questions, I think there's been that interest. And thank you for everybody who's attended, for engaging and asking all those questions of Jayne. So I'd just like to thank you again, Jayne, for sharing your expertise. This has been recorded, so we will be sharing it on our YouTube channel if you would like a refresher of the knowledge that Jayne has shared in the future. So thank you again, Jayne. Much appreciated. And
thank you very much for the opportunity. It's very good. Enjoyed that.
So thank you all again, and we have another webinar towards the end of the month. You can have a look at our events page. This one's on the hot topic of GDPR, but you can see all our events on our website, and hopefully you can join us again for another webinar in the future. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good day.